Hello, this is Dijoxon, and welcome to another episode of Stories in the Säfärsphere. Usual disclaimers at the start. There will be clicking throughout this video that I can't do much about. Like so. I'm recording this in the day, so there might be sounds in the background. I'm doing this all in one take, so any mistakes are part of the course. And I'm also trying some music in the background this time instead of the usual fire. A couple of people were saying they didn't like the fire, so I thought maybe some nice jazz could sound better. So today we're going to be breaking down the New Age Kingdom Turquoise fighter frigate. NAS is just short for New Age ship. Turquoise is the name of the ship. Fighter is its role. Frigate is its class. So this is one of the first ships I've made, so it's a bit rough. I think one of the easiest ways I'm going to be able to show the rest of this is showing its inspiration. So when I was making this ship, the inspiration was a sunfish. So you can see it's very flat on the side, but forward facing, it's very thin. So it's all height, no width. And that was the idea behind this ship. So our top three areas here are top-down views of the three different floors of the ship. So we have the weapons room here, which is where the main armaments are controlled from. There are 8 coil guns and 2 sets of laser weapons, which are controlled from the weapons room here. And we also have the storage room back here. This is the storage for everything, munitions, food and water, spare energy, weaponry, anything along those lines. It's all just shoved in a general purpose storage room. You can see down the middle here, this little square here with arrows pointing outside, that's an elevator. So there's an elevator in the centre of every floor, and that goes between all the floors. Some ships will have stairs, but this ship, in order to keep with the low profile, just has an elevator up through the middle, which makes it a bit weaker because the elevator could be taken out and you couldn't access those floors anymore, but it helps to keep the small profile. And the general key, which we have over on the side here, you can see that symbol means elevator. I need to get my brush back, hang on. This symbol means elevator, and any of the 3 diagonal lines means there's a door there, and then anything solid is just a wall. And we'll get to the rest of these symbols when we have the side. So, we'll go to the middle floor as well. This is the main floor, and because some fish are sort of like a semicircle, this area is a bit wider than the rest. It comes out a bit. So we've got the bridge here, and this front section would all be glass, assumably, so you could see out into space. As you might expect, the bridge is where the ship's actually controlled and piloted. This is where the captain will give its orders, so on and so forth. Then we also have the bunks right here in the middle of the ship, dead bang in the middle. Again, as you can probably guess, the bunks is where everyone sleeps, and it's where everyone's personal armaments will be as well. The excess go in the storage room, but everyone will have their own weapons as well. And we've got an extra door here for this side room, and that'll be the captain's personal quarters. We've also got the engine room on this floor. This is obviously where the engines are controlled from and maintained, and it's also where the majority of the energy for the ship comes from. There's a lot of reactors and what's not in this room, and this is what gives the majority of the energy to the ship, which it needs a lot of. And then finally on the bottom floor we've got the missile bay, whereas the weapons room is controlling the coils gun and laser. The missile bay is of course controlling the missiles, and also is responsible for loading the missile bays after every shot. Now the reason I chose the turquoise as one of my as the first ship to show off, is because it's a very unique ship because it has a shield room. In my universe, there are not many ships with shields. It's considered a very hard technology. It requires a lot of energy, and so really the only faction that ever has them is the New Age Kingdom because it's the most technologically advanced faction. So the shield room is a lot like the engine room, where it's mostly just for extra power, but it's also where the shields can be controlled directly. Usually in this universe, shields aren't just a full coating over the whole ship. They'll be manually or automatically directed in certain directions to reduce to minimise on the amount of power being used. And so they're targeted directly towards where enemy fire is coming. So now we're at the side view. And that is where we get the rest of the symbols on the key. So if I just scroll up here, we can probably have the full key in as well. Yep, okay, so I've got the full key up here. This is just one side of the ship. It's mirrored on either side, except for the missile bays. The missile bays, we've got two here, and they are not mirrored. They are actually supposed to be along the thin front side of the ship. They will fire out, they will lock onto a target, fire out, and then they will fully activate, and they will home in on the target. So they have a bit of a dumbfire, they go out, and then they trigger the lock. We also have coil guns, which have 2 barrels each, which they alternate between. These fire, big, heavy slugs that are thrown by more power, which, again, need a lot of power on this ship. There's obviously 4 on this side, and then there's 4 on the other side. For a frigate, it's quite a lot of firepower, because the point of this frigate is to attack other frigates and corvettes, anything around its same weight class or smaller, with a lot of forward firepower. These coil guns can only go 180 degrees either way, so they have a cutoff point around here, and they can't face backwards, and of course they only face forwards, up and down. So they can't, if something comes to the side of the ship, that is where the laser comes into play. So the laser can go in full 360 around itself, and it can also aim up and down like that. So it can aim just about any direction it wants to. So the laser is sort of a backup weapon to keep some threat on in case the ship gets swarmed. But it's also mainly for slicing through any groups of fighters that are coming towards it. Like smaller ships that might be deployed by carrier types. And it should be able to... It's quite a large laser, it takes a lot of power, but it should be able to just fire a continuous beam that can create an area of denial. It's got the engines, which are these very ugly rectangles. I've only got them sort of poking out like this because it makes them easier to see, but they don't actually poke out, they'll be flat against the ship. So we've got a big main one here and 2 on the back, and that's for the forward momentum. These 2 up on the top and bottom are obviously for going up and down, and then it's got a couple for going left and right as well. A couple on either side for left and right. No ability to go backwards, which a lot of ships will have the ability to go backwards. This one doesn't, and it doesn't have much of ability to turn either, which is what leads to this ship's biggest weakness. As I was showing with the Sunfish earlier, it's very thin head on, which is how it wants to fight, which is why all of its cannons face forward as well. It wants to fight head on. However, if ships are faster than it, can outmaneuver it, can avoid that laser, and obviously because it can't go backwards, so if it gets rushed down, it's got a very, very broad side without really any defense past the laser and maybe missiles, although they'll struggle to get a lock. So from the side, this thing will get absolutely shredded apart, so it wants to keep its opponents at a long range, a long to medium range, and it wants to keep them in front of itself. And it wants to use its surprisingly strong armaments, usually in a group of several of these types of ships, to shred apart any opponent as quickly as possible upon engaging, so that there is no chance of retaliation. Once they're at the side as well, the shield room becomes significantly less appropriate to use, because again, the more you have to cover with those shields, like this huge broadside, and the more shots those shields are taking, the faster that energy is going to overheat and run out. So once that happens, once this ship runs out of energy, it's really done for. There are some ships that have sort of a backup emergency fuel that they can use, but this ship requires a lot of power, much like a lot of New Age Kingdom ships. It relies on its power. So it doesn't want to use its shield really at all, and once it gets to the side, yeah, it's kind of over for this ship, if anyone manages to flank it. But otherwise, it's a very survivable ship, because once it's facing towards its opponent, it's a very slim target to try and hit. It can cover that front with shields quite nicely, because it's not too much to cover, and it can cover very closely. And if its front's getting taken off, which is the only part that should be getting hit, they're going to be hitting the weapons room, the bridge, the missile bay. This is honestly fine. Without the bridge, of course, the ship can't be controlled, but it doesn't die. The ship can still survive without the bridge, which some ships can't. So though it can't be exactly controlled, it can be partially controlled from the engine room, and it can still survive with the crew on board. And the weapons room and missile bay are bulkheaded off from everything else, so if they get hit and anything explodes, that's fine. Well, it's not fine, but, you know, it's not as bad as it could be. Whereas, if enemies fight from the side or get to the back, they're going to be in the storage room, which is just all munitions, and that's going to go up like the 4th of July. They're going to be hitting the engine room, which means the vehicle cannot move anymore. Absolutely no maneuverability. And they could also hit the shield room, which is just basically a lot of power cells. So the bottom of the ship's going to blow off instead of the top ship, like the storage room. It's a very short one, this episode again. I hope the next episode's going to be a bit longer. I want to do another character breakdown in that episode. But hopefully this gives an idea of the type of ships that exist in this universe. They're not necessarily ships that are intended to be hyper-realistic, like in TV shows like, I think The Expanse has quite realistic ships, and Firefly. It's supposed to be more along the lines of maybe Halo, those kind of ships, where there's a level of fun to it, there's a level of just sci-fi, but it seems feasible to exist in the real world. So yeah, that's it. Just a nice frigate, a very middle-line ship, and a quite common ship that you'll see just deployed in scouting groups for the New Age Kingdom. So thank you for watching this episode, and hopefully next episode we'll be doing another character breakdown that will be a bit longer than Alistair's and a bit longer than this. Thank you for watching.